Park Si-hyung has faced numerous crises while engaging in business and politics. Yet he has overcome all these challenges to reach this position. He has enjoyed enough power and made ample money. Now, all that remains is to retire peacefully after stepping down from the presidency. If it weren't for Kang Jin-woo, that is. In Korea, he would have used his power and money to somehow prevent it. However, there was no way to stop what was happening in the US. If only Kang Jin-woo were to disappear, wouldn't all the problems be solved? With political options blocked, all sorts of thoughts crossed his mind. He should have taken precautions before things escalated like this. Kang Jin-woo was the hero who saved California. If anything happened to him, the US would never sit still. Moreover, thinking rationally, Kang Jin-woo's disappearance wouldn't resolve the issues either. Park Si-hyung didn't expect the flaws he knew about would lead to such a predicament. If airbags had exploded right after the release, causing dozens of deaths, he would have taken action sooner. However, out of over 50 million units released, only a few hundred had issues. Only a dozen or so deaths caused this uproar? Isn't it likely that more people have died choking on candy? While he was unable to find a solution, Karos eventually announced the airbag defects in Unsung Motors to the media. Unsung Motors took no significant action. Taking the wrong approach might exacerbate the situation. Recalls and the bankruptcy of PAS were as good as settled facts. The more significant issue was that the U.S. Department of Justice had begun an investigation into the intentional concealment. Wasn't it said that bad news doesn't come alone? In a frantic search for a response plan, Secretary Lee Il-seon suddenly appeared at the police agency. He had been unreachable for days and showed up without prior permission. Surprisingly, he revealed to the media that the president had instructed conservative groups to conduct staged demonstrations. From his perspective, it was an unavoidable choice. If it were in the past, the trial would have been dragged out until public interest waned, eventually resulting in a suspended sentence. Afterward, he could have secured a position from Unsung or PAS. But now, both the police and the prosecution are on high alert, making it difficult to promise a position later. Claiming responsibility unnecessarily could lead to bearing the burden alone. On the other hand, if he only conveyed the instructions, he could avoid responsibility. Park Si-hyung, watching the scene on TV from the Blue House, was engulfed in shock. What a bastard. He had taken in this rootless person and even made him an aide. After a lifetime of indebtedness, this was betrayal. However, this was just the beginning. Once a crack appeared, it quickly spread uncontrollably in all directions. The U.S. National Highway Traffic Safety Administration issued a mandatory recall order for vehicles equipped with PAS airbags. Other countries were also considering similar measures, leaving the South Korean government as the only entity remaining inactive. Automakers expected to benefit from this were celebrating. Some even openly advertised, "Our cars' airbags are safe." Following this, a congressional hearing was held in the U.S. PAS executives were summoned one after another to the U.S. If they did not voluntarily appear, Interpol would register them as red notice targets, leaving them with no choice. During the Toyota recall crisis, the willful concealment of issues became a serious problem. Toyota agreed to pay a fine of $1.2 billion in exchange for a deferred prosecution. However, PAS could hardly afford such an amount. Moreover, related laws had been strengthened since then, making it impossible to avoid prosecution even if a fine was paid. Someone had to take responsibility, which would mean arrest. They would likely spend several years in prison. U.S. prisons are notoriously rife with racism. What would happen to a person of color entering such a facility for corporate crime? The stakes were too high to shoulder the burden solely out of loyalty or dedication to the company. Additionally, such dedication usually arises only when the company is functioning well. After a few years in prison, the company might no longer even exist, making any sense of loyalty meaningless. Senators grilled the PAS executives on who the ultimate responsible party for the concealment was. The key was knowing how far up the chain the reports went and who gave the orders. To evade responsibility, PAS executives were willing to testify. They asserted that they reported numerous times to Park Si-hyung, the then governor of Gyeonggi Province, who directly ordered the concealment. It's always tough at the beginning. Once someone began to speak up, testimonies and evidence flowed out. I went to him every month with settlement reports after he was elected president. I reported every time there was an airbag-related incident. Important decisions were made directly by Park Si-hyung, excluding CEO Park Si-han. The hearing was broadcast live, shocking everyone who was watching. Who would have thought that the real owner of PS was the president of South Korea? Kim Yo-jun, we are starting the full-scale tribute broadcast for the leader. Unfortunately, today is the last broadcast. We have been tirelessly asking whose PS it is, but now we no longer need to. Jo Woo-jin, because it has finally been revealed that PS belongs to the leader. Jo Woo-jin, the issue of the true owner of PS first came up during the last presidential election's Korean party primaries. Kim Yo-jun, let's listen to the leader's remarks from that time again. What does PS have to do with this? Who is the true owner? It's all a blatant lie. I have not lived that kind of life. You all know this is a lie, right? Kim Yo-jun, hee hee. Still funny hearing it again. Jo Woo-jin, I burst out laughing every time I hear it. Kim Yo-jun, from the leader's point of view, how frustrating it must have been. I mean, where in the world is someone who can't say their own company is theirs? Are they Hong Gil-dong or what? Jo Woo-jin, it's really fortunate that the leader has finally regained his company. Kim Yo-jun, but what's ridiculous is that all the people called to the US hearings all mentioned the leader's name. Not one person is willing to take the fall for him. I'm the one. I'll go to jail in place of the leader. Why can't they say that? Jo Woo-jin, as I've said before, the leader thinks solely of himself. If he doesn't care for those around him, why would they care for him? Kim Yo-jun, the thorough leader doesn't trust anyone. He couldn't even trust his own brother, which is why he handled PS affairs himself after becoming president. That's how we got here. Jo Woo-jin, we have to see that the leader's diligence has become his downfall. He may be feeling wronged now and blaming the late Seo Tak-kwon take. Kim Yo-jun, that makes sense because if PS hadn't colluded with Unsung Motors to fraudulently acquire TKT Precision, we wouldn't be in this situation, right? And the late Seo Tak-kwon take's documents were the final blow. The records revealing that airbag defects were reported multiple times to Unsung Motors and PS, as well as to the relevant institutions, have been fully disclosed. Perhaps the leader thinks the emperor was stabbed by a slave. Jo Woo-jin, it's like he was stabbed twice. Once for the airbag defect and another time for exposing the cover-up. Kim Yo-jun, it is said that slaves stabbed twice. Anyway, someone who tipped us off asked us to make sure to say this. After realizing there was a defect in the airbag he developed, Seo Tak made every effort to inform others. But Unsung Motors and PS rushed to silence him and conceal the truth. Jo Woo-jin, now they will pay the price. The only thing left for the leader is to be investigated once his term is over. Kim Yo-jun, hee hee. The leader is going to jail. The spark jumped directly into the political arena. Choi Moon-gil's candidacy for the presidential election created a landscape with one conservative candidate and two progressive candidates. The Liberty Korea Party was absorbing the centrist conservative demographic through image renewal, and thanks to Choi Moon-gil nibbling away some of Hyo Chong-min's votes, Lee Yong-hae was widening the gap and leading. The dream of becoming president was within reach. If things continued this way, the first female president would be born. However, just before voting, a major crisis erupted. No matter how much one distances themselves from the pro-Park faction and calls for a change in power, the Liberty Korea Party fundamentally struggles to deny its ties to Park Si-hyung. In particular, Lee Yong-hae served as a spokesperson for Park Si-hyung's campaign during the last presidential election and actively defended him when issues about the actual ownership of PAS emerged. During the presidential debate, New Politics Party's Hyo Chong-min focused his attacks on this point. During the last election, candidate Lee Yong-hae repeatedly claimed that PAS had no connection to President Park Si-hyung. Do you still hold the same view? Lee Yong-hae evaded the question and spoke vaguely. I think we need to monitor the investigation a bit more. Is PAS tied to President Park Si-hyung or not? If yes, then abusing power for your own company and colluding with Unsung Motor is a matter that should lead to immediate arrest after the term ends. Please state your position, candidate Lee Yong-hae. So whose PAS is it? As the interrogation continued, she desperately denied it. You shouldn't make such claims based on unverified facts. Didn't PAS executives testify in the US Congress? How can we trust what those people say? Have you seen the recent video circulating on the internet? Hyo Chong-min played a video he had prepared. It was a secretly filmed lecture from the early days of PS where Park Si-hyung stated that he established and operated PS. Isn't PAS linked to President Park Si-hyung now? That is. Without a rebuttal, Lee Yong-hae spat out whatever came to mind. There's no subject. Excuse me. He said, I established and operate PS, but he didn't say did he? Hyo Changmin asked, bewildered. Are you playing word games with me? What do you mean playing word games? Then if saying there's no subject isn't a word game, what is it? This is mocking the public. Touched on the mark, Lee Yong-hae grimaced and shouted while pointing. No, how can you say that? Resign from your candidacy immediately. President Park Si-hyung directly ordered cover-up of airbag defect. Long-standing controversy over true ownership of PS. Whose PAS is it? President Park Si-hyung remained silent. No statement from the Blue House. Han Min-gu mumbled as he read the flood of media articles. Well, it has come to this. With the revelation that Park Si-hyung is the true owner of PS, the various benefits Unsung Motors received from the government could not help but become a problem. The government-led hydrogen vehicle support initiatives would be halted immediately. Maybe this is for the best. Unlike hydrogen cars, electric vehicles had limitations in battery capacity and charging time. However, Professor Kim Ho-min had developed a next-generation battery that surpassed those limitations. While it would take time to commercialize at this point, the scales had already tipped towards electric vehicles. The hydrogen vehicle camp had already shown signs of breaking away, and this incident put an end to it. Unsung Motors had invested huge sums into hydrogen vehicles and had finished developing 2 new models, only awaiting mass production. However, given this atmosphere, there was no way they could sell even if they launched. For now, they needed to rethink their future vehicle development plans from scratch. Where did it all go wrong? Was it when they sold Karos? When they antagonized Kang Jin-hoo? Or was it when DHK Engineering went bust? Perhaps there had been several opportunities for reconciliation. What if, when realizing that Unsung Motors had ruined his family and caused his father's death, he had genuinely apologized and sought cooperation? Would things have turned out differently from now? Regretting it now is already too late. Looking back now, even if it weren't Kang Jin-hoo, something would have blown up eventually. Why didn't they take any action upon discovering the airbag defect? Was it simply due to the partnership with PAS? Did they naively think this level of defect wouldn't be a problem? I must be getting old. The current situation was the worst crisis for Unsung Motors. However, Unsung Motors was not weak enough to collapse like this. They had sufficient cash and stamina to endure. Toyota also faced a shaky moment during the recall crisis, but didn't they overcome it? Unsung Motors could undoubtedly do the same. But before that, someone had to take responsibility for this situation. Han Min-gu gave his final orders as chairman. Prepare for a press conference. Chairman Han Min-gu held a press conference at headquarters. Unsung Motors will conduct a recall for all vehicles equipped with PAS airbags to ensure consumer safety. This will apply equally in all countries and will proceed as soon as parts are procured. All employees will pledge to do their utmost to resolve the issue promptly. We sincerely apologize to all consumers who love Unsung Motors. The announcement of the recall immediately became breaking news. However, an even more important announcement was yet to come. Chairman Han Min-gu spoke calmly. I take full responsibility for this incident. I will resign from the position of chairman of Unsung Motors and all other roles, effective immediately. I sincerely apologize once again. After finishing his announcement, Han Min-gu bowed at a 90-degree angle. For the retirement of a giant leading the second-largest group in the business world, it was a humble sight. Chairs of conglomerates often create controversy, say they will take responsibility and step down, only to return quietly. However, Han Min-gu stepped down from all positions in the group and firmly stated there would be no return to management. Although Han Chan-young had received long-term successor training, the sudden departure left everyone in confusion. Before leaving the company, Han Min-gu gathered the presidents of each subsidiary and asked them to fulfill their roles until the group stabilized. The immediate issues are crisis response and restoring trust. Unsung Motors decided to recall its vehicles worldwide, separate from government investigations in different countries. The supply of PAS airbags was immediately halted, and they rushed to procure parts from other manufacturers. A car cannot be completed if even one of its tens of thousands of parts is missing. Factories were halted and vehicle deliveries were delayed. Even cars that had already been released could not be delivered to customers until the airbag replacements were made. When the Unsung Motors factory stopped, hundreds of partner manufacturers also halted operations simultaneously. In contrast to Unsung Motors' quick announcement of measures, PAS maintained silence and did not respond to any media inquiries. While PAS executives testified at U.S. congressional hearings, Park Si-hyung's son, Park Myung-hoon, resigned from his position as CEO of overseas corporations and returned to being a regular employee, trying to dissociate himself from the president and PAS. However, it was obvious to everyone that this was just a superficial act. President Park Si-hyung canceled all scheduled events and did not appear at meetings or official occasions. Both the opposition and ruling parties pressed for the president to make a statement. There was no chance of winning the upcoming election. It was necessary to kneel and apologize to win back the public's trust and consolidate conservative support. In the end, just days before the election, Park Si-hyung issued a public apology. This was his second apology since a prior one regarding excessive prosecutorial investigations and the illegal surveillance issue by the National Intelligence Service. Esteemed citizens, I stand here with an utterly dreadful heart. I have never pursued my own interests for even a moment, nor have I harbored even the smallest selfish desire. I have worked solely for the country and its people with the belief that honesty is the best policy. My involvement with PS was merely helping my brother's business in certain matters, nothing more. Yet it pains me greatly to receive such misunderstandings. Observing the events unfolding now, I sometimes question, did I become president for this? However, I believe I bear ultimate responsibility for all that has occurred during my tenure. Citizens, our security faces a significant crisis and our economy is also in a difficult situation. With many issues piling up both domestically and internationally, I will do my utmost to govern until the end of my term. Thank you. It seemed as if he regarded himself as a victim of conspiracy rather than recognizing his own wrongdoing. It was an apology better left unsaid. The internet erupted in outrage. What the hell is this nonsense? Honesty is the best. I burst out laughing. The characteristic of a presidential apology equals no matter how you listen, you can't figure out what they're apologizing for. They're out of touch again. A scheme to avoid legal responsibility at all costs. Until the end, the president remained the same. Consistency is acknowledged. Anyone can apologize with words. If you sincerely wish to apologize, I recommend making a public confession on a hot iron plate. If needed, I'll help fund a setup in the middle of Gwangwoman Square. I feel a sense of self-loathing and distress, wondering if this is why I voted for the president. Can't we impeach now? I want to see the president go to jail. When he will be released later, I can imagine he saying, having experienced prison life. Either way, this election is a failure. Lee Yong-hae candidates, please resign now. I received the call. This is Han Min-gu. Yes. I had a feeling I knew the reason for the call. All that happened at your residence is my responsibility. I sincerely apologize. I should have asked for forgiveness as soon as I learned, but I'm very sorry for being too late. If given the chance, I'd also like to apologize to the late CEO Kang Dong-hyun and his wife. Would my father have been happy to know this? Rather than feeling happy or exhilarated, I felt a weight lifted. It felt as though I had laid down a heavy burden. I'll think about it later and let you know. Thank you. He hung up the phone. I set my phone down and stood by the window. It was rush hour and Tehran Street was filled with cars. Lost in thought for a moment, Taekyu came inside. What are you doing? Aren't you going home? Let's go have a drink. Out of the blue. I just feel like drinking. I went outside with Taekyu. The fallout from the airbag defect at Unsung Motors was greater than expected. Once valued at over 200 trillion won, the market cap of Unsung Group shrank to below 150 trillion won. The business world watched in shock. The cause of this situation was none other than OTK Company. Initially, when the name OTK Company first emerged, it was merely a startup that had managed a few lucky investments. Later it was revealed that the CEO was Kang Jin-hoo, and his tumultuous relationship with Unsung Motors came to light. Unsung Motors had been thriving with the support of the regime, while Park Si-hyung wielded significant power, controlling the media and investigative agencies. In Korea, companies that fall out of favor with the regime find it hard to survive. No one believed OTK company could take them on. Yet in just a few years, both Unsung Motors and the Park Si-hyung regime were completely toppled. Rumors circulated that OTK company was now effectively the second largest firm in the industry. Considering its current growth trajectory, it might soon surpass Samsung Group and become number one. After the emergence of Big One, the industrial landscape was changing. There was no doubt that OTK company would lead that change. Everyone was invigorated. They felt the need to forge ties with Kang Jin-hoo. However, Kang Jin-hoo rarely engaged in public activities domestically and did not attend business gatherings. In contrast, Samsung Group had President Im Jin-young stepping up early to form alliances. As a result, they strengthened cooperation through joint ventures and share exchanges, growing together. Business leaders found it hard to meet Kang Jin-hoo directly, so they tried to build relationships with Park Sang-yeop and Oh Hyun-ju. This atmosphere oddly spread to the business school at Korea University. Despite claims of a meritocracy, alumni connections were undeniable. Large corporations and financial institutions eagerly sought out upcoming graduates from Korea University's business school. Particularly, anyone who had attended school briefly alongside Kang Jin-hoo was guaranteed a job offer. Students were equally keen on getting in touch with Kang Jin-hoo. Applications to the business school surged to more than 3 times compared to the previous year. Students were lining up to join the campus club Siltuary. This club was known as the place where Kang Jin-hoo and Park Sang-yeop first met. The presidential voting has begun. We went to vote early to avoid media exposure. Don't you have any predictions on who will win? Isn't it obvious who will win? In recent polls, the New Politics Party candidate Hyo Chong-min was leading by about 5%. The exit polls will likely reflect a similar outcome. Polls have been wrong more than once. Surely they'll get it right this time. The situation is very different from Brexit and Ronald's win. We decided to gather at home to watch the vote counting broadcast, and by evening, everyone started to arrive at my place. Senior Sang-yeop and Henry were the first to arrive. Henry had gone on a business trip to the US after China and returned yesterday. This was to send materials like steel and cement produced in China to the US. So it's been hard to see him at the company lately. How was the business trip? Yes. As I mentioned before, they're using various excuses to demand renegotiations. In short, prices have risen significantly since the contract was made, so they want to renegotiate. It's not an unreasonable stance. After the Big One, raw material prices skyrocketed. If they sell elsewhere, they can get much higher prices, and selling to us barely covers costs. No wonder they're making a scene. I firmly stated that there will be no renegotiation since a contract is a contract. Good job. Except for the quantity we use directly, the rest will be sold to the US government at the purchase price. If they unilaterally break the contract, the US government won't just sit idly by. Unlike Senior Sang-yeop, who came in casual attire, Henry is all dressed up today. This is because Hyunju Nuno was also supposed to come. A little later, Hyunju and Ellie arrived. Hi. We're here. Welcome. Afterward, the delivery food ordered by Taekyu arrived one after another. The living room table was set with pizza, chicken, jokbal, marinated pig's trotters, and Boss Sam's steamed pork. I took out a lot of beers from the fridge. We all clinked our cans and toasted. The vote counting has started. I watched the vote counting broadcast while grabbing some pizza and chicken. About an hour later, Taekyu murmured while drinking cola. There's not much tension. He was right. From the beginning of the count, Hyo Chong-min was about 3% ahead, and as time passed, the gap slowly widened. The chance of a reversal was almost non-existent. As the counting moved into the second half, Hyo Chong-min's victory was practically assured. The vote percentage gap with the second place was around 5%. Senior Sang-yeop said, "If it weren't for that incident at the end of the election, Young-hae could have really won." Right. Hyo Chong-min received 43%, Young-hae 38% and Choi Moon-gil 15%. The rest belonged to minor candidates. If the moderate conservatives hadn't turned their backs, the result would have been the opposite. As the magic number was surpassed and the victory was confirmed, Cheers erupted from the New Politics Party headquarters. In contrast, the Liberal National Party offices wore gloomy expressions, and Yong-hai lowered her head. The PAC, People's Alliance for Change, was in disarray, and a change of government became certain. Hyo Chang-min announced that the new government would investigate resource diplomacy, defense industry corruption, and the issue of collusion between politics and business. In other words, he intended to expose Park Si-hyung's corruption. Sister Hyunju, smoking a cigarette, remarked. Park Si-hyung is completely finished. That's about right. Hyunju Nuna smiled. Her expression seemed to say, since you touched my brother, you'll have to pay the price. I looked at Taekyu. Does this guy even realize how terribly Nuna thinks of him? Ellie asked, what will you do now? Well, I'm not sure. Thinking back, it had truly been chaotic for months. I hadn't really rested, not only in America but also after returning to Korea. Now I felt a bit relieved. For a while, I should relax and take it easy. Then Ellie smiled and said, so when will we go on that vacation we didn't take before? Henry perked up his ears, looking determined to go. I guess I should think about when to go. I drove towards Dongtan. It had been a while since I visited. My mother usually came to Seoul. When I arrived home, my mother surprisingly asked, what brings you here without any notice? Do I need to inform you when I'm coming home? Well, I might not be here. Then I can just wait. There are bodyguards and I know the house's security code. I felt a presence inside the house. Is anyone there? Yeah, we have a guest. Come in quickly. Upon entering the house, I was shocked to find an unexpected guest. I was taken aback and asked, what brings you here? The woman sitting on the sofa stood up to greet me. Hello. I came to the area for work at a nearby hotel and thought I'd stop by to say hello. It was none other than Im Sumi, the president of Ceylon Hotel. Having a CEO in the house I grew up in felt surreal. My mother said, I told Sumi to contact me whenever she has a chance to come to Dongtan. I was really grateful for her help when I stayed at the hotel last time. President Im Sumi smiled and replied, I was just planning to drop off a cake, but she insisted I have a cup of coffee with her. Since you're here, how could you just leave? Please, sit down. On the table were a cake that seemed freshly bought and some instant coffee. Guest hospitality is definitely Maxim. We took our seats and my mother pointed to me saying, you know my son, right? President Im Sumi nodded. Of course. My mother began peeling fruit and said to me, oh, by the way, you mentioned you were close to Chairman Im Jin-young, right? Well, we know each other well enough. That's great. You should tell Chairman Im about Sumi. I heard his sister is the president of Shillin Hotel, right? Ask him to look out for Sumi. What? What does that mean? Telling President Im Sumi to look out for Sumi? President Im Sumi also looked flustered. What do you mean? This is President Im Sumi herself. Hearing this, my mother chuckled softly. He doesn't get the joke. They have the same name. Huh. My mother alternated her gaze between me and President Im Sumi. Suddenly, her mouth dropped open and she dropped the apple she was peeling. Oh my goodness. Could it be you didn't know? I just thought she was a hotel staff member. So that's why she kept saying Miss Sumi instead of President Im Sumi. You must have seen her on TV. I have seen her, but, oh dear, I can't believe this. If someone doesn't have strong features or isn't a famous person frequently seen on TV, it's possible to not recognize them in person. Still, considering that she hadn't realized until now, my mother seems quite oblivious. She quickly stood up and bowed her head. I apologize. I should have recognized you sooner. President Im Sumi also looked flustered and stood up, bowing her head. Oh no, it's my fault for not introducing myself properly. I didn't even know you were the president all this time. You can continue to treat me comfortably like you have. I prefer it that way. Really? Is that all right? After clearing up this misunderstanding, my mother awkwardly muttered something about needing to bring more fruit and headed to the kitchen. I took a piece of the peeled apple with a fork and said, I guess she didn't think the hotel president would look after her personally. Hope there weren't any mistakes. President Im Sumi shook her head with a smile. Mistakes? Thanks to you, I enjoyed coming to work every day. I've heard a lot about you. She say you have been smart and a good student since you were young. Why is all the embarrassment landing on me? What? Mothers really do love to brag about their sons, right? It must have been hard for you to listen. No, I was bragging about my son too. Did I mention my son placed in the math Olympiad this time? Come to think of it, she does have one son? I can't believe my mother would be in a bragging battle with someone from the Samsung group. By the way, it's a good coincidence. I was just about to contact you. President Msumi took a bag and handed me an envelope. I was hoping you could attend the hotel opening party. The Ceylon Hotel owns a vast area near Namsan, including a hotel and duty-free shop. Building a Hanok hotel on that land has been President Msumi's long-time dream. Due to various regulations, development has not been easy for a while. However, after years of effort, the project was finally approved and construction is now underway with the opening just around the corner. Is this a celebration party before the opening? Can you come? I spoke honestly. Well, to be honest, I've never been to an event like this before. Then it might be good for you to come. Only business people are attending on the first day. You don't have to worry about the media or politicians showing up. I felt like I should repay her kindness towards my mother. I shouldn't refuse, right? I nodded. I'll attend. That's great to hear. President Msumi gave me 2 more invitations. Please give these to Vice President Oh Taekyu and CO Park Sang-yeep. You can decide freely if you have partners or someone else you'd like to bring. Understood. While we were talking, my mother came out carrying a lot of fruit. We exchanged conversations in the slightly awkward atmosphere. After a while, Seo Msumi finished her coffee and stood up. Oh my, are you leaving already? I wish I could stay longer, but I have an appointment. Well, you must be busy as the CEO. I hope I didn't take up too much of your time. What are you talking about? Thanks to you, I had a good rest. We went outside to see her off in front of the house. Seo Msumi spoke first to my mother, who was still feeling a bit awkward. Can I come visit again later? Hearing that, my mother's expression brightened. Of course. You're always welcome. Once I returned to the office, I called Henry. For some reason, he had a very displeased expression. Could it be because he's been traveling frequently lately? I tried to greet him first, but Henry questioned me. What's going on? What do you mean? Aren't all the important tasks finished by now? But you haven't said anything about the Maldives vacation that was cancelled last time. You said you'd help, yet you haven't done anything. Was that the reason? I held up the invitation. I was actually going to talk to you about that. They're having a grand opening party for the Ceylon Hotel. He abruptly asked, sounding uninterested. So what? I'm thinking of asking Hyunju to go with me, and I wanted to see if you could escort her. Henry quickly changed his expression and bowed deeply. Thank you, CEO. I'll do my best from now on. That's the right attitude. I headed toward the Golden Gate building. Hello, sister. I brought coffee. Hyunju was busy working while smoking a cigarette. Wait a moment, I'll call Ellie. As I drank my coffee and waited, Ellie came upstairs carrying a stack of documents. He placed them on the desk. These are the approval documents. Please read them and sign. I asked her, what are all those documents for? It's December. At the end of the year, financial companies get busy with their closing reports. But I guess it's the same for other companies too? Hyunju finished her work and sat on the sofa. I talked about my meeting with President Msumi. She asked me to attend the opening party. I received an invitation too. Oh. You did. I wondered why Hyunju hadn't mentioned her about her invitation. As the branch manager of Golden Gate, her position is higher than most corporate presidents of large companies. There might be a difference between being a member of a chaebol family or a professional manager. Aside from that, Hyunju is also a major shareholder with a 3% stake in OTK company. What kind of party is this? It's a social gathering. You could call it a modern aristocratic party. The more influential the host of the party, the more everyone wants to be invited. If it's a party hosted by the top conglomerate Samsung Group, just being able to attend is an honor. Such parties are also active in Hong Kong. Originally, the culture of social gatherings came from the West. Since Hong Kong was a British colony, it would have been heavily influenced. The concentration of wealthy individuals on such a small piece of land is probably also a factor. Hyunju said while smoking her cigarette, when I was in Hong Kong, I used to go with Ellie sometimes. Really? Ellie nodded as if recalling those times. Jessica was the most popular. There were plenty of wealthy men vying for her attention. Hyunju is indeed charming. Though I doubt Taekyu would admit it. A social gathering is quite an important occasion. Oh, is that so? People tend to group with similar individuals. When doing business, there are many opportunities to help and be helped. In the past, conglomerates had deep relationships with politics and media, but that's history. Now that these conglomerates have grown larger, they have begun to emphasize relationships within their own circles more. Marriages among conglomerate families have become common, forming a kind of strong cartel. If you look at the family trees of Korean conglomerates, they might resemble those of medieval European nobles. Well, you don't really need to, Jin-Hoo said. We grew outside the cartel in new industries rather than existing ones. As such, there's little need for help. Most significant businesses are primarily located abroad anyway. Ellie asked me, "Are you going?" Yes. I mentioned I'd go, due to a favor from last time. There must be many pretty women there. I smiled. Don't worry. I'll be going with you. Is the timing okay? At my words, Ellie's face brightened. Of course. Hyunju Nuna chuckled lightly. Looks like a debut in social circles. Well, it's just an experience for me. What about Taekyu? He went to Busan with Senior Ji-hong to check out a game show. Since OTK Games participated with the Lost Fantasy series, it's ostensibly work-related. Yet it seems like a hobby. They invited me as well, but I couldn't go due to work. Hyunju Nuna didn't seem surprised at all. For him, a game show would be more fun than this party. You're going too, right? Since it's my first time at an event like this, I really want you to come with me. I was worried she might refuse, but thankfully Hyunju nodded. I've been working non-stop lately, so I wanted to get out a bit. Let's go for a change of pace. I quickly added before she could change her mind. That's great. I'll ask Henry to escort you. I called a hair designer to my house, got my hair done and styled, then picked out my clothes. I also put on the Rolex watch that Ellie had gifted me. After that, I got into the car and headed to the Grand Dayton Hotel. While I waited by the front entrance, Ellie approached. Did you wait long? The moment I saw Ellie, I was speechless. Unlike her usual light makeup, she had gone all out today. She wore a green silk evening dress, complemented by a gray faux fur coat. The stunning lines of her figure were clearly visible beneath the coat. Her wavy hair cascaded naturally down to her shoulders, and she adorned her exposed neck and ears with simple jewelry. Having only seen her in suits for work, this was a refreshing change. I had always thought she was pretty, but this was on another level. It was astonishing how much a woman could transform with makeup and an outfit. All eyes around us quickly turned to Ellie. Even the valet staff stood in a daze, unaware that a guest had arrived. Ellie blinked and asked me, "What's wrong? Am I being weird?" I shook my head. No, you just look amazing. It's hard to believe anyone could look better than that. Ellie smiled brightly. Thank you, you look great today too. I opened the car door for her and she bed into the passenger seat. It's been a while since I've gone to a party, so I'm a bit nervous. You can't glance at other girls. Of course not. There couldn't possibly be anyone more beautiful than Ellie there. What about Hyunju Uni? The designer is coming over, so she'll be getting ready right now. You'll be surprised when you see her later. Hyunju Uni decided that Henry would drive her. I started the car and headed towards Namsan. As always, rumors spread faster than footsteps. The rumor that Kang Jin-Hoo would attend the Salon Hotel opening party circulated throughout the business community. Family-run conglomerates, proud of their inherited wealth, initially dismissed Kang Jin-Hoo as an unqualified speculator. But that was a thing of the past. Now it was a situation where building connections was essential. Everyone had arrived early at the party to meet the CEO of OTK Company. Though most of the business crowd was present, no one from Unsung Group attended. This could be partly due to their poor relationship with the Samsung Group and the chaos from a sudden executive resignation. People chatted while occasionally glancing toward the entrance. The host of the party, President Im Soo-mi, made her appearance alongside Chairman Im Jin-young. People rushed to offer their congratulations. Then Kang Jin-Hoo finally made his entrance. In his mid-20s, he seemed incredibly young when compared to the typical 40-something CEO. According to rumors, just a few years ago he was practically broke. Yet within a short time he had built a massive company that shook the world. Young women's eyes sparkled. They all dressed to impress for this occasion. It wouldn't hurt to gain favorable impressions, even if nothing romantic developed. Throughout history and across cultures, no man despised a beautiful woman. However, Kang Jin-hoo was not alone. Next to him stood a stunningly beautiful foreign woman. CL Group Chairman Yang Junemo's granddaughter, Yang Hana. Her father, Yang Ho-young, is the president of CL Chemicals, and her mother, Hong Eun-ju, was a famous actress. The wedding of a second-generation conglomerate heir and the era's top actress was quite the sensational event at the time. Yang Hana inherited her mother's charisma and looks, making her beauty rival that of most celebrities, enhanced by careful grooming. When she appeared in a CL Group promotional commercial, it created a significant buzz, leading to an influx of offers from entertainment agencies. Photos capturing her at parties or events became newsworthy. As soon as she entered the hall, all eyes were on her. If she hadn't come with her father, men would have rushed over to speak to her. While Yang Hana enjoyed the party atmosphere, Yang Ho-young looked worried. Has Kang Jin-hoo not arrived yet? Just as Samsung Group partnered with OTK Company, CL Group was collaborating with Unsung Motors in the fields of automotive electronics and battery production. In terms of scale and revenue, CL Electronics couldn't compare to Samsung Electronics. However, in battery production, CL Chemicals had secured the top position in South Korea, surpassing Samsung SB. The biggest issue in the battery industry right now is the next-generation battery developed by Professor Kim Ho-min. If commercialized successfully, the benefits would naturally go to the joint venture TS Company and Samsung SB. CL Chemicals lacking this new technology would fall behind. Though they could manage without OTK Company in the automotive electronics sector, they needed their cooperation in battery production. Thus, this was a valuable opportunity to forge connections. Yang Hana reassured her father. Don't worry. I'll talk it over and try to set up a meeting. Beyond group matters, she was personally interested in Kang Jin-hoo. Many young men in the business world had pursued her, but none stood out to her. However, the CEO of OTK Company was different. OTK Company is a non-listed firm with Kang Jin-hoo holding 80% of the shares. Considering the current corporate value, his personal assets exceed 100 trillion won. With this standing, he is not only the richest in Korea but also ranks among the world's wealthiest. What's so special about Kang Jin-hoo? He's just a man after all. Born into a family ranked fourth in the business world and endowed with natural beauty, Yang Hana was quite confident. She greeted acquaintances alongside her father. However, she had a feeling that the attention of those around her was dispersed. When she turned her head, she saw a woman around her age. The woman was a beauty with a cute face wearing a casual dress with a short skirt. What was unusual was that her hair was blonde. The business world is conservative, so it would be safe to assume that no one dyed their hair blonde to such an extent. If she had seen her before, she would have recognized her at a glance due to the hair color. Who brought her as a partner? In any case, it was unsettling to think there was another woman drawing attention besides her. As she pondered this, Kang Jin-hoo finally entered the party venue. His appearance in a suit was not much different from what she had seen on broadcasts. He's not bad-looking. Surprisingly, he was with a Caucasian woman with brown hair. From her face and proportions, she seemed to be a model. Beyond her pretty face, she exuded a unique, alluring aura. Where did that woman come from? Not much is known about Kang Jin-hoo's personal life. Was she simply accompanying him as a partner, or was she his girlfriend? If she was, how deep was their relationship? Kang Jin-hoo greeted the people from Samsung Group. As Chairman Im Jin-young and President Im Soo-mi moved elsewhere, Yang Hana, who had been watching for an opportunity, approached Kang Jin-hoo to greet him. Hello, CEO Kang Jin-hoo. I'm Yang Hana, the granddaughter of Chairman Yang Junimo from CL Group. Kang Jin-hoo shook her hand. Yes, hello. Nice to meet you, she said, flashing a wink. I've really wanted to meet you for a long time. If it's okay with you. However, before she could finish her sentence, he was already looking at someone else. What brings you here? It's been a while. Next to him stood the blonde woman she had seen earlier. From their conversation, it seemed they knew each other. Yang Hana bit her lips slightly. Why are there so many women around? Is he a player? As expected of a salon hotel, the lobby seems to reinterpret traditional styles in a modern way. Instead of a giant chandelier, soft lighting embedded in the walls and ceiling illuminated the surroundings. When I entered with Ellie, I felt the gazes of people focused on us. The first to approach were Chairman Im Jin-young and President Im Soo-mi. It's nice to see you both together here again. I had met Chairman Im Jin-young when I was in Silicon Valley with Ellie. We exchanged shares of Kairos and Samsung Electronics at that gathering. I said to President Im Soo-mi, "Congratulations on the hotel opening. Thank you for coming." President Im Soo-mi greeted Ellie saying, "As I heard, you're quite the beauty. Seo Kong must be smitten." Ellie politely replied, "Thank you." Hyunju's comment about the modern-day Noble Party was no joke. The business world has its hierarchy based on company size. If the top 5 groups are dukes, the next 10 companies are marquises, and the 20 below them are counts. Perhaps the bottom tier in the business world is barons? It feels like almost everyone who drives the Korean industry is gathered here. There are unfamiliar faces as well as some I've seen on TV a few times. I've met a few at a meeting hosted by Ronald. There are many foreigners too, President Im Soo-mi remarked. They're representatives from luxury brands. The hotel business doesn't have a high operating profit margin. Therefore, most operate on a large scale globally like Hilton, Hyatt, and Marriott, or are usually part of a conglomerate. Contrary to its name, the main business of Salon Hotel is duty-free shopping, and most of its operating profit comes from the duty-free shops. Noticing that I seemed a bit tense, Chairman Im Jin-young smiled and said, "There's absolutely no reason for you to be nervous. The one who should feel regret is on the other side." That's true. What do I have to regret in front of the CEOs of major corporations? Just think of this as an opportunity to familiarize yourself with faces. Yes. I'll greet the others and come back. As the host of the party, it was their duty to take care of the guests. Chairman Im Jin-young and President Im Soo-mi mingled around the hall, greeting people. While meeting the granddaughter of the CL Group, I spotted a familiar face. I was taken aback. "What are you doing here? It's been a while." She wore a short off-shoulder dress that fully revealed her shoulders, with slender legs extending beneath the knee-length hem. The most striking feature was her light blonde hair. But she wasn't a foreigner. "Did you come where you're not supposed to?" "Not exactly, but..." I was just surprised to see a school junior in a setting like this. Yuri beamed at me. "I came with my dad. As the vice chairman of RCK Brothers, he could easily be invited to such events." "What about Chairman Ryu Cheol-jaeun?" "Uncle is currently in China." "I see. I'll have to greet Vice Chairman Shin Byung-do later." "Do you come to these kinds of parties often?" At my question, Yuri shook her head. "I'm a newbie too. I heard a rumor that you were coming, so I got curious and checked it out. It's been a while since I saw you. Thinking back, it really has been a long time. A lot has happened in between. You made it here." Yuri bowed her head to Ellie. "Hello, Ellie Uni. You look so beautiful today." "Thank you. But in my eyes, you're much prettier. You shine the most among everyone here." "Hee, thank you." I asked Yuri, "Did you have vacation yet?" "Of course." "Did you get good grades?" At that, Yuri rolled her eyes. "Senior, you sounded just like my dad. Do you really have to bring up such unpleasant topics at a nice gathering?" "Sorry." Seeing her respond like that, I felt like I had messed up. I wanted to show her my report card to comfort her. "There will be a lot of people wanting to greet you, so I'll come back later." "Okay." After Yuri left, Ellie asked me, "Isn't Yuri really pretty?" "Yeah, sure." I absently glanced around and murmured, "When is Hyunju Uni coming?" Ellie replied, there she is." I turned my head toward the entrance. Henry, dressed in a tuxedo, looked just like a Hollywood actor who had stepped out of a screen. Beside him was an incredible beauty. For a moment, I thought it was someone other than Hyunju Uni. She had taken off her glasses, which she always wore, and had let her usually neatly tied hair down on one side. She wore a form-fitting deep blue evening dress with a plunging back, paired with high heels. I was taken aback. Is that beauty really Hyunju Uni? Her expressions and movements seemed natural, as if she were familiar with such occasions. In contrast, Henry appeared much more nervous. "Uni, she looked that beautiful?" I had known her since middle school, but this was the first time I'd seen her like this. Ellie nodded, beaming with pride. "Absolutely. She was a hit at the Hong Kong party, you know. When I just heard about it, I thought it was an exaggeration, but seeing Hyunju Uni now made me realize it was true. Plus, she must have been even younger back then. The sight of them together was truly that of a handsome couple. Seeing them like this, they match perfectly. For some reason her expression seemed even more proud. I think so too. Ellie waved her hand and the two approached us. I said with genuine admiration, "You look so beautiful I almost didn't recognize you." If Taekyu saw you he would have been shocked. Hyunju Uni blinked and said, "Thanks even if it's just words. But it's a bit uncomfortable since I haven't worn lenses in a while." Ellie smiled brightly and handed champagne glasses to both of them. "All right, let's all have a toast." We clinked our glasses. A moment later, Senior Sanjiop also arrived. Next to him was a tall, slightly slim beauty. It wasn't the actress he was rumored to be dating before, he claims they only had a fling, but rather a fashion model he started seeing recently. He's as dedicated to his dating life as he is to work. Since K Company has many contacts with large corporations, Senior Sanjiop knew the faces of many people. He spoke to me in a low voice. "Do you see those guys over there?" When I turned my head, I saw a group of young men gathered in one corner. Those guys are the heirs of Chables and they probably don't like the current situation. Look at their faces, they seem sour. Why is that? They think it's a talent to have good parents and suddenly you show up and steal all the attention. They can't exactly complain to the CEO of OTK Company. Senior Sanjiop pointed to another direction this time. There were young women gathered over there. Why do you think those women came so well dressed? If they came alone, there would be plenty of women rushing in wanting to be near you. Oh, come on. Think about it. In any group, if you marry someone, you'd be a top contender in the business world instantly. Would such a good opportunity come by again? If Chable families married solely for love, do you think Biomsiangsianga or Biomunsianga would exist? That makes sense. I wasn't particularly interested though. People greeted Senior Sanjiop first. "Hello, CEO Park Sanjiop." "Oh. It's been a long time, Executive Yu." Then naturally Senior Sanjiop introduced me. "CEO Kang Jinhu. This is Executive Yu Jiangyan from GJ Shopping. Nice to meet you." It took quite some time just to greet everyone individually. As I took a moment to breathe, unlike earlier, the surroundings felt a bit noisy. Suddenly I thought of Taekyu. Since he said he left Busan earlier, he must have arrived in Seoul by now. Ellie noticed my expression and asked, "What's wrong?" "I was thinking about Taekyu. I wish he could have come with us." At my words, Hyunju Nuna chuckled. "He'd probably hate it. Let's just be thankful if he didn't show up in training clothes and slippers." That's true. Still, I felt somewhat guilty being the only one here. We had originally planned to go to the game show together, but I felt bad sending him alone due to work. Should I have just followed him? I feel like I can hear Taekyu's voice from somewhere right now. Ellie smiled. "It's probably just your imagination." I nodded. "I know. But somehow it feels like Taekyu is desperately calling for me." Huh. Is it an auditory hallucination? As I thought this and turned my head, the smile that was on Hyunju Nuna's face had stiffened. Without even saying who should go first, both Nuna and I shouted, "Oh Taekyu! A star." This is a gaming show held in South Korea, considered one of the 3 major gaming exhibitions in Asia alongside the Tokyo Game Show in Japan and China Joy in China. This year it was larger than last year with more participating companies, indicating the growth of South Korea's gaming market. OTK Games set up a booth for Lost Fantasy M at the show. More importantly, OTK Games representative and the father of the Lost Fantasy series, Ichikawa Shigeru, would be attending. He was expected to announce the production of Lost Fantasy Online at this event. Once this news broke, gamers went wild and applications for the presentation filled up instantly. Fortunately, there were separate seats reserved for investors. Taekyu headed to Busan to explore the gaming show, accompanied by the publicity team leader Young Ji-hong, due to their previous connection during the game's founding, and because he could speak Japanese. Taekyu's presence was unmistakable within OTK Company. Although most major investments were decided by Kang Jin-hoo, Taekyu was the first to invest in him. It's well known that he founded OTK Company and initially funded it by selling Bitcoin. Above all, he appointed Kang Jin-hoo as CEO while giving up his own shares and brought his sister, Oh Hyunju, on board to partner with Golden Gate. In a way, it's not an exaggeration to say that Taekyu built the current framework of OTK Company. Hence, staff members occasionally joked that the vice president was the true power behind the scenes. At least when it comes to gaming investments, it's known that the vice president takes a direct role. They took the KTX train to Busan. Jung Jae-hong glanced at the excited Taekyu and thought, if things go well this time, will I catch the vice president's eye? He felt a surge of motivation. Upon arriving at Busan Station, a vehicle was waiting. They got into the back seat and the bodyguard drove them to the Bexco where the gaming show was held. Entering the exhibition hall, they saw a vast space filled with booths from various companies. Such exhibitions provide a great opportunity for industry insiders and the public to promote new products. Jae-hong was familiar with this scene, having attended similar events often, although it was his first time at a gaming show. OTK Games set up a large booth in the center. The highlight was undoubtedly Lost Fantasy M, along with displays of the previous series. Inside the exhibition hall, a crowd had already gathered in the presentation area. The two took their seats at the front, guided by a staff member. Taekyu boasted, "Team leader Jung, you're incredibly lucky. It's rare for Shigeru to present in person even in Japan." "Is that so? If Warren Buffett is to investments, then Shigeru is to the gaming industry." "Oh, I see. Is he really that impressive?" The presentation room was packed with people. There weren't enough prepared seats, so people filled the aisles and stood at the back, while others waited outside. Most attendees were male, but women were also occasionally visible. The age range varied from teens to those in their 40s. There were old users who had followed the series for a long time, alongside newcomers brought in by Lost Fantasy M. The atmosphere was charged with excitement. Journalists from specialized game sites, online media, and mainstream press were all present. "Did you bring the bag?" Taekyu asked. "Of course." Inside were various Lost Fantasy merchandise that Taekyu had collected. He carried them to get signatures after the press conference. A moment later, Ichika and Shigeru along with the production team appeared. Although game sites respectfully referred to him as Shigeru, he was actually in his late 40s. He joined the gaming company in his mid-20s after graduating university and started a game company with acquaintances at 28, overseeing the development of Lost Fantasy. At that time, no one anticipated that the series would last this long. Shigeru greeted the audience. The large screen behind him displayed the Lost Fantasy series logo, and the presentation commenced. His speech was immediately translated and presented as subtitles on the upper part of the screen. As he listened, Jung Jae-hong was taken aback, his mouth agape with surprise. What the hell does this even mean? Even though he knew Japanese, he couldn't understand it. In contrast, others seemed to grasp the meaning before the subtitles appeared, marveling or nodding in agreement. Taekyu explained. The most famous and polished game in the entire Lost Fantasy series is number 9. This online game is set in the Nine's universe, the Sarana continent, but its combat system applies the highly praised count time battle from number 12, while the character growth system integrates the license board system from the 11 intermission. Users can choose to pursue a hybrid class or a single class. However, a hybrid class can potentially create a dual master if done well, but if not, it can lead to a weak character. There are hidden classes that can be unlocked at specific levels, but balancing these is a challenge. So what the hell does this even mean? Is this the level of expertise required to invest in the gaming industry? After the presentation concluded, everyone rose from their seats and applauded. A brief Q&A session followed. After an hour-long event, Shigeru exited the presentation hall with the production team. In a separate meeting room, the vice president of OTK Company met with the representative of OTK Games. Taekyu was exhilarated. "I made the right investment." Meeting the game developer he had enjoyed playing games from childhood was like a dream come true. If he weren't an investor, how could he have seized such an opportunity? "Nice to meet you. I am Ichikawa Shigeru." "Hello, I am Taekyu." Taekyu learned Japanese through self-study after being exposed to Japanese anime and games from a young age, enabling him to communicate fairly well. They began discussing games in earnest. Since half of their conversation consisted of gaming terminology and proper nouns, there was no need for interpretation. MMORPGs, which are enjoyed by numerous players simultaneously, have a low likelihood of success compared to their massive development costs. Actual development expenses range from hundreds of millions to over 100 billion won, yet many games cease service before even lasting 3 years. Because of this, Most small to medium-sized game companies can't even dare to develop such games. Had it not been for the profits from Lost Fantasy M, OTK Games wouldn't have even considered a development plan. MMORPGs come with high risks but also significant rewards. If successful, they can yield stable revenue over a long period. However, failure means losing development funds entirely. To reassure the vice president of the parent company, Shigeru said, "We plan to minimize development costs and shorten the timeline by utilizing the existing series systems and characters." Even so, the currently projected development cost reached 5 billion yen, and it was uncertain how much more it would increase once development began. Take-You spoke resolutely. Lost Fantasy is more than a game, it's a world. The characters are another version of ourselves living within that world. Therefore, what's more important than development costs and box office success is continuing the legacy of the series and creating a high-quality game that meets fans' expectations. Everyone, including myself, hopes for that. Shigeru was deeply moved by these words. The investors he met so far have been only focused on short-term profits. What they desire is not a high-quality game but solely money. But to think he would meet an investor who acknowledges his development philosophy. "I promise to create a game that won't disappoint you. I will trust and wait." After the conversation, Take-You received signatures on the game titles and posters he had collected, and they took a photo together. "I will soon visit the OTK Games headquarters with Jin-Hoo, the CEO. You're always welcome." They exchanged a firm handshake and Ichika and Shigeru left first. Jung Jae-hong asked, "Is your schedule all done now?" "What are you talking about? It's just starting." Take-You enthusiastically wandered around each booth, checking out the new games, playing them and carefully examining various products. Jung Jae-hong followed the vice president with his luggage, secretly impressed. To think the vice president conducts market research in the gaming industry so thoroughly. Success in his investments isn't just luck. It was a misunderstanding. The vice president was just enjoying a hobby. Although 2 plainclothes bodyguards followed him, there was hardly anything to protect. Unlike the well-known Kong Jin-Hoo, little was known about Take-You's identity. After finishing a tiring schedule and arriving at Seoul Station by KTX, it was night. They got into the waiting vehicle. "Team leader Jung, thank you for your hard work." "No, it's nothing. What have I really done?" In reality, he hadn't done much. He had come along for translation, but he hadn't expected the vice president's Japanese skills to be this good. "I'm hungry, so let's go have dinner. What do you want to eat?" "You've worked hard, so I'll cover it. Should we call Jin-Hoo to join us?" "I believe CEO Kong is currently attending the Salon Hotel opening party. I also know that CEO Park Sang-yeep is with him." "Right, he did say he was going today." Jung Jae-hong spoke with surprise. "I never expected that both of them, who were my seniors in school, would be attending a party hosted by the Samsung Group. I'd love to go to such an event if I get the chance." Then Take-You spoke nonchalantly. "Shall we go?" "Excuse me. Just a moment. I must have received something from Jin-Hoo. Found it." Take-You pulled an invitation from his bag. Jung Jae-hong said, flustered, "The vice president might be fine with it, but is it really okay for me to attend such an event?" "What's the problem?" "It's an opening party, so we just need to celebrate earnestly. I heard there's a buffet, so let's go and eat to our heart's content." "Are you sure it's really okay?" Take-You replied confidently, "Team leader Jung, just trust me and follow along." "Ah, I understand." The bodyguard drove to the Salon Hotel. The staff in charge of the party hall looked at the young man in front of him, pondering for a moment. Who is this person? He wasn't in a suit or tuxedo but instead wore jeans, a hoodie and a padded jacket. The only reason he was dressed at least somewhat decently was that he was on his way to meet the developers Ichikawa and Shigeru, whom he had admired since childhood. Otherwise he would have probably come in a tracksuit and slippers. "Since you brought the invitation, I can't just send you back. You can go in." "Yes." The two confidently entered the party hall. Jung Jae-hong looked around with a curious expression. The splendid hall was filled with young men and women who seemed to be famous figures from the business world and wealthy families. "I never thought I would come to a place like this in my lifetime." No matter how he think about it, quitting KYB Securities was a brilliant decision. If he hadn't, he would probably be staring at a monitor in a brokerage firm right now. "Can I look around for a bit?" Sure. If you happen to meet Jinhu, please tell him that I'm here. I'll just have some food. Got it. On one side of the hall, a simple buffet was set up. Unlike others who only drank champagne and cocktails without touching much food, Taekyu picked up a plate and eagerly began to load it up. Young Hannah always drew the attention of men wherever she went. Therefore she assumed that Kang Jinhu would be the same. However, he was accompanied by a stunning beauty and he didn't even cast a glance at her. They had exchanged only a brief greeting. People gathered in small groups around the tables, sipping champagne and chatting. The topic of conversation was undoubtedly OTK Company. Since representatives Kang Jinhu, Park Sang-yeep and branch manager Oh Hyunju are here, is there only one person missing? The vice president probably didn't come. Yeah, he has never even shown his face to the media. By the way, was branch manager Oh Hyunju this beautiful? Who is the woman who came with Kang Jinhu? I think she's a Golden Gate lawyer. Not a model? It wasn't just Kang Jinhu who was attracting attention. The foreign woman accompanying him as well as branch manager Oh Hyunju were also in the spotlight. Additionally, a blonde woman named Yuri caught Young Hannah's interest. They seem to have a close relationship. I wonder what their connection is. Is she the woman he came with? It wouldn't particularly matter if they were dating. After all, relationships in the business world are often based on practical conditions. She knew how much her father cared about the relationship with OTK Company. If Kang Jinhu doesn't work out, it would be nice to at least meet the vice president. As she was lost in thought, she collided hard with someone in front of her without noticing. Ah! At that moment, the plate the other person was holding tipped over, sending food flying everywhere. The sauce and jam splattered not only on her face but also all over her pink dress. Young Hannah gasped and looked at the man in front of her. He waved his hand with a smile. It's okay. It's not an expensive outfit. You can just go. What did you say? At first she didn't understand what he said, but then she realized the other person's clothes were also a mess. But that wasn't important. Young Hannah said in a sharp voice. If you spilled food, shouldn't you apologize first? He blinked. What are you talking about? You bumped into me. You should apologize. He had a point. It had been her who had bumped into him while distracted. However, no one had ever acted like this in front of her before. Don't you know who I am? The other person replied, looking confused. Do I really need to know that? If you did something wrong, just apologize.